Oh, how's it going, iHaku? Thanks for the subscription.
Perks of waking up early.
Yeah, I like that. Let me hop this on. I was actually just sitting here looking at stuff. What are we doing today? We are doing Ansible Labs, and I haven't done Ansible Labs in a while. So Samantha Nakamoto, how's it going? Thanks for stopping by. We're just going to do labs. We're going to be in a site called Killer Coda, which, if you guys haven't seen Killer Coda, here are my Ansible Labs out there. And we probably won't do the very basic ones because you can kind of go do the very basic ones at any time if you wanted to. But what I kind of thought we'd do is we'd start down here after the initial deploy ones and do some of these ones that I don't think I've worked through with you guys for a while. But I'm going to show you guys some things that have been very useful to me. Kevin from Raleigh, how's it going over on the YouTube side? I'm just going to show you guys some stuff that has been super useful to me in my career. In fact, a couple of these things I would say... I've had a long career, right? Almost 25 years of doing this stuff, and I can't just say this has built my whole career, but I can tell you this is some of the best kudos I've gotten in my career is through some of this understanding how to pull stuff out of systems and present it properly for management or for my team or whatever. So I want to show you guys how to do that because Ansible's is a very powerful tool, but much like how Bash and scripting are powerful, you could do all kinds of things with them. Zorgal, how's it doing? Or how's it going, rather? Guys, if you don't know, I've known Zorgal for a pretty good amount of time here. He's always helping out with the courses and keeping people on track. He kind of comes from another discipline, but a lot of the stuff that he does is really good for... I mean, it just translates over to good engineering, right? So, I always tell people down the server, make sure you're listening to Zorgal because, he's not directly in this space all the time. He's learning this space, but he definitely has a lot of, the industry experience and things that I'm trying to kind of impart to people, right? Like Kevin over on the YouTube side, we learned a lot of this stuff the hard way. It was kind of like a bumpy, rocky road, and then the ProLUGs group, our goal is to, make it a little more of a paved road for the people that come after us, right? Because we used to get a CD or a DVD thrown at us, maybe even discs for some of you guys, and you had to be able to install Linux. And if you couldn't, well, I guess you're not going to be a Linux guy. But it's an easier road nowadays. You can get into Linux right here, and we can get into these tools without having to go through the install process. Now, I'm not saying that's not still important. I still think you should know how to do that. But that's not the first step anymore. The first step can be, I can learn all kinds of stuff. I can even get in a Windows box and go to WSL and do all kinds of Linux without even having to go through a big install. So, all right, anyways, let's get into it. So we'll do the first one here, which is setting up Jinja templates. I'll link this for you guys that want to do the lab with me. And the labs are free on Killer Coda. All you have to do is have some kind of Google account or something like that you can log in. They don't even bug you with, they don't even send messages or anything or bug you. But all right, so let's start this out. It says you've been using Ansible and have decided to work with templating tool that comes with it. So there's this templating tool called Jinja, specifically Jinja 2. You are going to use Jinja 2 to stamp when activities and deployments happen on your servers. Okay, so we're doing something like what we had built up until this point. We have some deployment that pushes code to a server or something. Maybe when the server is first built, we push code over to it. And we want to just stamp information to that server about what was happening in that server when that deployment happened. This has been very important to me in some ways where, I've got this code that's sitting out there and teams can deploy it through Tower or, some tool like that. Tower is now Ansible automation platform, whatever the tool is. But I want to know when it was kicked off. And you say, well, can't you just go back through the Ansible, automation platform logs or something? Yeah, probably. But if I'm already on a box and if there's already, maybe there's 4 nodes and then one of them is configured differently and the teams are asking me why, I could just very quickly go see, oh, well, this one got a different version of it. This one is stamped at a different date. This box was built differently. There's things that I can put on the server so the server knows it about itself. That's how I use this. Linux from floppies, yeah. Somebody said the other day, we were talking about something. So it was in my training in Ohio. I was training, there were 3 admins, and then they were there for this training that I was giving on some of our clusters that we had built. And one of the guys said something about 34 disks, and I was like, oh my God, just 34 floppy disks, one after another to keep adding to a system. I never had to go as high as 34, but the floppy days were kind of a little before I got into the industry, right? I got in pretty early in the 2000s. And I kind of came in networking where a lot of the networking stuff was already set up. So, but anyway, so, or you would just download a tarball or whatever. Your team wants to verify that certain conditions existed when the deployments occur, and that's very important, right? Like, was the kernel version same? Was the size of the CPU and the RAM the same? Obviously, we could have decisions like don't install it if there's not enough RAM or CPU. That's also a thing we could do. But maybe in this case, we just want to stamp what the conditions were. So we're going to go over here. We're going to verify our host file. By the way, I'm just going to say lab. Whoops. Go here. I think I still have it in my paste buffer, actually. Yeah. So we'll say lab 1 for the day. Right. This was lab 1 for the day, and I'll just say we'll just ask ourselves questions as we kind of go through it, because this is kind of how we do our labs around here. We work through this stuff. So can we verify our host file? So cat root, in this case, hosts. And it's useful to say, probably, when we put Ansible on a box, right, where's Ansible going to look by default? Where's the default host file if I didn't give one locally? Now, if you guys do my labs and kind of go through all this killer code stuff, you'll see that I always put a local copy of a host file, and then we explicitly call it. I do that as my own little discipline. I like to just always know exactly what I'm hitting. But what if I just wanted to use an inventory for a big cluster or something, like this customer I was just out at? We had this big Spitfire system, and this thing has 39 racks. It's got 39 racks, and all those nodes can be defined somewhere so that we can hit them by rack or by all this different information. The default place that Ansible uses, is Ansible and then hosts. That's the default location that it uses. Now, we don't have one in here, so I'm not sure exactly why that's not there. Let's make sure Ansible's on the box. Yeah, Ansible's there, so I'm surprised that's not there. But we could make that, and that's the default location that it would look at. All right, so it doesn't matter that much. Hanso, hi, how's it going? We are just working through labs, right? That's what we do on Sunday mornings. I figured I'd hop on a little early and just work through some labs while we're kind of hanging out. And then that gives me the rest of the day if we're hanging out down the Discord. We have some pretty cool events coming up in the Discord. I know that they're doing Linux from scratch, which is a book. They have that later today. So if you go pop on here in the Discord, you can always go look at what events are coming up. And they'll show it in your time. So today at 3 p.m. my time, which is probably later for some of you on the East Coast, they're going to work through the Linux from scratch. It's an ebook that's free. You can go click on it. They're going to be ways that they can fully automate the LFS process. So that's kind of a cool little project, and those guys are going to be doing that. They might even be turning that into like a little blog on our website. It depends, they're just working on that stuff. So, all right, that's just something I wanted people to know about. That's all down in our Discord. So, we're looking at this and we say, okay, we've got these things. We also have in our root system here, we're going to create a Jinja template or a Jinja template file called root template. So just vi root template.j2, and then in here we're going to put whatever data we want. Stamped info from Ansible, and we're going to start to add some information to it, right? At or on this date at some time, right? So we're going to get into that here in a second. But then also we're going to create a deployment playbook called root template.yaml to push that over to all servers as root template.text. So those are all of our values that we're going to need as we kind of walk through our little build here. We've got a tip that says that the answers are right there, but I figured, for today we'll build it from scratch just for fun. So let's vi also a root template .yaml, and you can do YML or YAML. It doesn't actually matter. I come from when I came from originally, I was in the Ansible world. We used YAML all the time for pretty much everything. But then when I got into Kubernetes, everybody uses YML. It doesn't matter. They both work, right? You can sit around and argue on forums about it if you want, which people love to do in the tech world, but it doesn't really matter, right? I would just tell you, try to do the same thing all the time. Let's put 3 dashes at the top because that's how we know that we are dealing with a YAML file. That's the denotation of start of a YAML file. And if you ever do API calls, if you ever do anything where you're using like kubectl commands and stuff, you can put multiple files and keep having dashes, and you can actually do this inside of Ansible as well and call multiple playbooks out of one file. We're not going to do anything like that today, and maybe I'll have some future labs on that. But real quick, we can just say hosts, and we can do all kinds of things here, but I'm going to show you guys a little trick that I like to do. I'm going to do something that's not in this lab, but I'm going to put a variable right there called survey hosts. Super weird, right? Why is Scott doing that? I'll show you guys here in a second. Because wasn't the right answer, the actual thing I probably should have done was hosts, and then I had just looked at it and it was servers in that, the host group inside of that inventory file was servers. So I could call servers right there. But I always do this because this is like a short. This is kind of like, I always think of it as like you need a key to turn this on. If you don't know how to call my playbook, it doesn't run. And you say, why would you do that, Scott? That kind of sounds like a jerk move or whatever. And it's like, no, because I've seen really good engineers that knew all kinds of other stuff but didn't understand how to call Ansible, and they've like hit a whole company. And we were almost on the evening news one time when I worked at AAA. We had an engineer who was very talented in Linux. He was a level 4 with us, which is pretty high level. Well, it only goes 1 through 6. So he had been around. He had been doing Linux for a long time, but he didn't understand how Ansible called something. And he ran a playbook against all that me and my brother had left all in there right here as the hosts. So it was going to hit the whole inventory of the entire company. And it would have taken we would have been on the evening news that night. So it was probably about 2017, 2018. We would have taken the whole company down because it would have wrecked 1,500 Linux boxes. So that's not great. Yeah, that's not optimal. We use the limit usually. Yeah, and he didn't understand what he was calling, so I just will never leave all there. It's too much of like pointing a loaded gun at yourself and going, well, I'm not pulling the trigger, so it's okay. And it's like I'm not pointing a loaded gun at myself, right? I'm not pointing an unloaded gun at myself, right? It's just not. I mean, I grew up with guns, so I don't point them at myself. So hosts, and then let's say that a few of the other things is we can say gather facts. This is an option that we have to use the factor tool to gather a bunch of information about the server. We do need to do this. So you can say true. You can say yes. You can say true like this, which by the way will make a linter happy. Linters, if you ever do like Ansible lint or YAML lint, they want it to be uppercase. But I'm just going to do it lowercase because I'm both lazy and I think that looks fine. If you have a rigorous and strict policy, you probably are going to let's just do it the way that like a rigid organization would do it. You're going to have a capital true right there, just like that. But yes, true, however you want to upper or lowercase is going to work. For admin templates, we have a dynamic inventory that OS team owns. Yeah. So I used to pull my inventory every morning out of Satellite. That was one of my favorite little things. I would just do an API call. I'd pull everything and I'd build my inventories. And then I could very quickly, like if somebody said, hey, how many servers are different on Friday than they were on Monday, I could just do a diff between the two files. So you call a template and fill in the host you want to target with a limit. Okay. That's a good way to do it, Kevin. Yeah, I'm going to tell you guys, like when you get into Ansible, like we'll often say stuff like I tell people, this is the way I always explain this is when you're a kid, I tell you can't cross the road. Can't cross the road. You're 5 years old, you can't cross the road. But does that mean you could never cross the road? No, once you're old enough to like know that you look both ways and then hold an adult's hand or whatever, now you can cross the road basically at your leisure once you understand the rules. It's the same thing with Ansible. Like I'll show you guys a way, but I don't prescribe things. Like I try to be very non-prescriptive as an admin and engineer. Ewo. Yeah, he definitely like almost took the whole company down. If the server he ran it on hadn't crashed, he would have taken the whole company down. But where I'm going with that is I try to just show you guys the way that I do it, and everybody puts their own little flavor on stuff, right? They do things their own way and stuff. So linters are good. Yeah, linters will just give you 15 pages, or well, let's say 15 lines of complaint, but only like 1 or 2 of them will actually stop the playbook from running. But linters I'm not trying to crap on linters. I think Ansible lint and YAML lint are great practices to run through, for sure. Get full inventory control. The OS teams own the creds. So yeah, okay, fair enough. Yeah, especially if you don't have. So I've always been on the OS team, so I generate them, and then people can kind of strip things out from there. I'm also used to kind of the discipline of having the host names of the servers represent what the servers are. So you guys will see, like in my home lab, like I do P01. This actually comes from like an older one that we used to do. P01 was like the data center, P01 or P02. And then the next thing was the name of the server. If it was like N, it was in dev environments. And if it was P, it was a prod environment. So N would be any of the test or lower environments. P, in the naming of the server. I don't do that because my home lab's just my home lab. But this did denote, this kind of came from an old company that I had worked at. So I thought that was kind of a fun little thing. What were we doing last night? Oh, we were looking at people's public keys last night. That's the last thing I did before I kind of got off my server. Me and the wife went, it was our anniversary yesterday. So me and the wife were, we were going to go try a new place, but I was like, well, do we really want to do a new place on our anniversary? Or we'll just go head over to, we did like Texas Roadhouse, which is kind of a fun little place. It was pretty good. Warren versus failure in the linter. Yeah. And then you can actually take all those things I was showing, like here, you can actually take that out of the linter if you don't like it. But I'll just tell you, like, it does kind of look good if you're doing code review and stuff to make sure everybody's on the same page there. I'll just, it's like my malicious compliance. I'll just do lowercase true and I'll be like, it still works. Now, I don't sit there. I don't really argue about that kind of stuff. I don't sweat that stuff often. Other things we can say here is become true. If I'm already root, I don't really need that. But in a lot of companies, we have a policy where root can't log in. In high-performance compute clusters, we almost always get an exception to that because we need to use root keys for functions. But for security posture, especially like zero trust stuff, root can't be jumping around the organization. So normally we'll have like a service underscore Ansible account, and it'll come in, so it won't be root, but it'll have sudo permissions to become root. So it's almost like it's swimming under a, there's some water. I don't know if any of you guys ever saw Conan the Destroyer, but they have to like swim to get into a little ice temple to save the little girl. I don't know what the girl is. She's not a princess, but she's like she's a person that can get the horn and then they can fight the god, whatever. It doesn't really matter, but it's a great movie if you've never seen it. But they have to like swim under. It's kind of the same thing. You got to come under on lower permissions and then sudo up to the permissions you have. You can't just be root everywhere in the organization. So we can say become true or it doesn't matter. We can do become method. And there's a whole bunch of methods to become root if we needed to. Sudo is the default. We can keep going. We can do connection method, which is by default SSH, but maybe we wanted to go into like a cherooted jail. We could do that. And we're actually going to be doing that in some of the automations. We did that in some of the automation classes where we go into an image and then we modify the image through a cherooted jail. So that's if you were on my killer coda, you would go over into the automation stuff and it would be down in there. Having root is fun. We always call that like the Wild Wild West. You're just right, just shooting in the air. But the point is, like, we could keep modifying things, but we don't need to. And then we can just say tasks. We could start with tasks, and we could start writing our tasks here around what we're going to make. And what we're going to make in this one is going to be the simplest of things. We are going to make a simple little template, or we've already got the template over there. We're just going to push the template to all the servers when we're done with some other things. So maybe we say name push template to all servers. And maybe this would be after a bunch of that other deploy stuff that we had earlier. Said, yeah, and as a penetration tester, not having root is likely why there are so many... So Hex, I was, some of you guys know that have been around, I was the red team lead for a while over at AAA as well. I kind of moved over there from the platform engineering lead. And then it was kind of weird. They fired my boss and my boss's boss, so I directly answered to the CISO, and then I kind of backed away from that role. But where I'm going with that is, yeah, we would do outside like black box testing, and then we also had internal white box testing that we would do. And we had a bunch of stuff like that. We also worked directly with like the app security team, and we would test new apps that came out. We would do static testing. We would do, so normally some of you guys, there's static application security testing, SAST, and then there's DAST, which is dynamic application security testing. SAST tends to be when you're looking at the code in the code base, looking for BS in there that shouldn't be there. And then DAST is when you look at it when it's running, right? So we did all that kind of stuff, right? Probably because your boss and their boss's boss and blah. Yeah, actually, so Hex, it was they couldn't get the reports that the CISO wanted to him fast enough. And I was the tech lead, right? I'm always technical. I've never been an actual manager, which is weird because when I just flew back in on Friday from Ohio, the boss called me up and he was like, "Hey Scott, would you want a little bit more PM type role? Would you want a little more project management type stuff?" And I'm like, I like being hands on, right? I like being hands on the keyboard. I feel like you get away from that too much and you're not maybe as technical, but. Anyways, let's keep going here. So we did our name, and then we come over here, and the module we want is template. So if I didn't know how to use the template module, there's a couple ways I could figure it out. I could come out of here, and I could read about it here, Ansible doc, and this is how you're going to do it for you guys that are doing RHCE and stuff. You're going to do Ansible doc -s, and you're going to read for template. And you're going to get all the information on what your values are in here, specifically what's required, like the destination is required. I have to say where it's going from. And then probably another one that's going to be required is the, where's it at? Source. Source is also required. So minimum would be a source and a destination here, right? So maybe I hit Q, I go back in here, and now I got to give some arguments to my module. And the arguments are going to be source and destination. Where are we going to put it on the far node? So our source is root template.j2, and our destination is root template.something, let's say, .text. Let's be a little more fancy here. Let's put a variable in here. And I'll show you guys how we find the variable if we didn't know. But let's add a variable right here that looks like this. This is going to start to get pretty big. We're going to say ISO 8601. Basic. ISO 8601 I think is all together. I'll show you guys how we'll find it out here in a second. ISO 8601. Oh, I'm dumb. Ansible date time dot ISO 8600 or 8601 basic short. I believe that's right. And we'll close that up. Now you're gonna say, Scott, how the heck would I know that, right? There's no way. There's no way. Oh, I could put. You're right. I should put vars up there. Yeah. Vars would be if I had special vars or anything like that. Yep. And then I could have vars. And by the way, guys, there's 22 different places that vars can be stuck into a playbook. This is just one more of them. But there's that. Yeah. So this is a long one, but I want to show you. There's no way I could possibly remember this. And also, I think I have this wrong. So let's go validate it, right? There's a way that we can always validate things. So we know the host group that we have, servers. So we say Ansible servers. This is going to be a ad hoc type command. Ansible servers. And then I'm going to say -i root host, because that's my host file. And I'm going to give the module -m setup, which is going to go run factor on all the servers and give me all the information. And then I'm going to go look for an argument to filter by Ansible date time. There we go. So I'm going to run this real quick. And against those two servers, it's just going to give me a dump of all the information. And here is the ISO 8601 basic short that I want to stamp into my file right there. So, but by the way, it's Ansible _date_time dot ISO 8601 _basic _short. So I could go validate my data now. If I didn't know for sure that was right, I would now have that. Let's see, root template dot Ansible _date time dot ISO 8601 basic short. Cool. My variable's right. Okay. So we could just test this real quick. We can just run that playbook and see if it pushes. But we haven't put anything into the Jinja template yet. So let's go put some stuff into the Jinja template too. So Jinja root template .j2. I probably shouldn't have called all the names the same thing, but whatever. Stamped info from Ansible on. And let's do right here Ansible date time dot date. So that's the date. Oops, too close curly brackets. And then we say at Ansible. Oh, and it doesn't matter if you put spaces in there or not. That's going to also be kind of your teams. Some teams like spaces, some teams don't. I actually prefer spaces normally, but I had already started it without, so dot time. So if we did this and we just cat out root template.yaml, there's our simple little playbook to push a template. And if we cat root template, here is the simplest little piece of information that we can possibly push to that. So let's try it real quick. Let's say Ansible playbook, and we're just going to run the playbook root template dot YAML. Right? Let's see if it runs. Does it break everywhere? Oh, it broke everywhere. Why? Because I don't have a variable called survey hosts. So I need to give extra vars. You could also just do -e, but I like to be verbose when I give my instructions to my junior engineers. Survey hosts equals, and we could give the host group, so servers. There we go. Now this will work against the nodes that we expect to. Is there a typo on the J2 template? Uh-oh. Oh, I didn't give hosts either. So I didn't give the file. Let's see. I want to see it break if it does break. We got to give the host group. There we go. Now it'll find it. It'll hit the 2 nodes. And it failed. So I was testing you guys, and iHaku passed. I'm just kidding. I don't know if I was testing you guys or I just had stamped info from... That's for time. Where's my error? You said there's a template. There's an error in there. Where's my error? And, oh god. I was testing you guys and I failed. Ansible date time, Ansible date time. Good. Escape : WQ. Run it again. Now it won't break. But I was trying to test you guys. Do your service accounts have any type of cherooting going on? So I do cheroot when I am building images. So I do some cherooting in the environment. But mostly when I'm working on like werewolf images, and I can show you kind of what that looks like. By the way, let's test real quick. If I just ls in here, let's go look at our template. Stamped from Ansible on this day at that time. Cool. That's good. Now, I didn't put any other variables in there yet, but we can see that there. By the way, you can run this command if you just want to copy those. If you don't want to use what I just did there. But the answers would be, so if I cat answers, if you just want to go look at them, and then template.j2, this is what I provided for you. So it's the same thing. This is an auto-generated file by Ansible at this date and time. And then we have host name, and we have these different variables here. So very quickly, you would say, well, Scott, how would I know what those variables are, right? You showed us earlier how to get the Ansible _date_time, but how would I get these? How would I know these other variables? Well, there are things that you can figure out, and the main one is I would just I can't do Control-Shift-R in here because it'll reload the page, but I can just history grep for like setup, right? And here's my setup command. So if I bang 13, right, it'll rerun that and it'll give me the date time info. But if I do the same command and I take away the argument here, setup will go out to all the servers and it'll just dump about 16 pages of info for each of these servers. So watch, we're just going to dump just everything. It's just going to be a big old mess of info. Just so much information about the system. I can see the number of CPUs that exist. I can see the type of CPUs. I can see the Ansible OS family is Debian, so if I want to know if they were Debian type servers, or typically there's also Ansible distro for that. And we could just see a bunch of information about what's going on in the system. Then if I had a specific piece of information that I knew I wanted, but I didn't know exactly what the like sub piece of information is, we could go grab that. So watch, I'll show you here what I mean by that. So let's say I was just looking through this and I'm like, all right, this is way too much data here for me. Look, Ansible LSB gives me some good info. But I say, I know something, it's something about like a distribution, but I don't know exactly what it is. I could, instead of going through here and looking like this for it, which will take a long time, there's a lot of stuff here. Ansible, I could instead do something like this. I can go back to my command and put that argument back on for all my arguments and say filter equals Ansible distribution. And if that is its own value, that'll come out as just Ansible distribution. It'll give me that. But if I wildcard it with an asterisk, because I think there's a bunch of sub information, I can do that, and this will give me all of the stuff that's past that. So Ansible distribution, if I needed to know, I know all the boxes in my environment are Debian, right? They're all Ubuntu in some way. So my Ansible distribution is Ubuntu. But some of them are 2004, some of them are 2204, and some of them are 2404. And I want to stamp it on there, or I want to make decisions on it based on what actual distribution version it is. This is where I would do that, right? Ewo, you said, sorry for going off topic, but what's my opinion on OpenClaw? I've never used OpenClaw. I don't even know if I know what that is. I don't even know. Oh, somebody told me about this the other day. I haven't messed with, was one of my buddies using this somewhere? I think somebody might have been, reverse search is the best grep distribution. Yeah, you can't use Control R. So Control R without. I've always just done Control Shift R. So whenever I try to do it in here, I always just break everything. Is it age? I've never messed with this, guys. I'm gonna be honest. I'm like the least. Like I have no problem with AI. I've probably used it less than like anybody. I've done like some AI generation of like pictures for some of my presentations just to be funny, but I've probably done like 20 AI prompts in my entire life. Like I don't hardly do anything with them. It's not. I mean, again, I don't have anything with it. It's just I haven't had any time to really dig in. So I'm probably falling behind in that space. But I've been focused heavily on my HPC stuff lately, and HPCs are almost always back behind some kind of air gap, anyways. So we're looking through this. We're doing the lab, and by the way, any of you guys can do the lab with me. I'll put the link up in case people got here late. He said somehow it's got more stars on GitHub than the Linux kernel. That's funny. I know I can do Control Shift T and bring it back up. Is this where do they have? Let me go look at their GitHub. Yeah, it looks like they got a lot of. They've got less contributors though. Most things are in TypeScript. Okay. The claw decides who will stay and who will go. I'm sure some of you guys know where that comes from. I know that from seeing it years ago, but the wife says that a lot. Like if anything about a claw comes up, she says that. Yeah, I haven't played with it. I do have a project I'm going to be working on soon for the home lab. I have it all planned out in my head. I just haven't done it because I've had that Proxmox server up for like 6 months now, and I haven't done hardly. I put one server on it, seriously. All the other servers are just messing around. So I have a plan to make our lab environment better. I may even have us burst up into the cloud a little bit, so that'll be kind of fun. But yeah, iHaku. Yeah, well, I'll check into that a little bit. That seems like an interesting tool. So real quick, if we were to just let's take this and we've now stamped the system and we know that we can do it. So let's look at what questions we could ask ourselves about this, right? And then cat template.j2. So maybe a question would be, what is the Ansible module to push templates? And that's kind of silly, but it's template, right? So template. And then, that's super annoying. What are some required arguments for the template module? Right, so what are some required arguments? We know that you need to have a source and a dest, right? Those are required. Those were things that we saw that were in there required. There's that. Yeah, Haku, I definitely can do some home lab stuff. I might work a little bit on it tomorrow. I might be doing a little bit of stuff in there, but that'll be good. Dippy said, "What it would be cool if you did some clustering with Proxmox. Not sure how feasible it would be with your lab, though." I have 5 physical servers in the home lab. I have 4 of them on XCP-ng and 1 on Proxmox. The one on Proxmox has about all the horsepower of the other 4 put together. A little over a terabyte of RAM and I don't know, probably close to probably somewhere around 8 terabytes of storage total. And I can start to move the XCP-ng clusters, or individual nodes, over into Proxmox soon too, if I kind of wanted to. Yeah, I'm back streaming. Yeah, I hadn't streamed. Actually, I was on yesterday, and I realized I hadn't streamed in almost a month. I just haven't. I kept, I sat here like probably almost every night because I sit at my computer most nights, and I was almost like ready to stream like 30 times. I don't know. It was almost like I just was like, I just don't want to do it. And then I would just watch something on Crunchyroll or do something else. And I was playing Slay the Spire 2 for a little bit. That was kind of fun. I think I got to like Ascension level 4 on one guy, 3 on another, and 1 on another. So I'm doing okay at it. But I just realized it was like such a waste of my time. Right, I was in there. Yeah, I don't have any GPU yet though. I do need to get GPU in there because we're going to be doing some high performance compute stuff, and I'm putting together a course on high performance compute once the automation one's done, and I have here's my notes on it so far for some of you guys. Right, this comes especially from the NIST 800-223. This is the diagram I use all the time when we deal with clients over at Redline. I'll show them this, and like this is how we build high performance compute, right? This is like what we put into it. And then over here I was starting to explain yesterday. I kind of popped on for a little bit, and I was explaining how we'll put together like a primary, a dev, and a parts system for people. I don't know what we really call this. It's typically just a parts system, but these always have code names to them. And then we were talking about like why you want to have a parts system, because if a life cycle is 5 to 8 years, some as much as 10 or 12 years in high performance compute, you're not going to be able to get stuff from your vendors anymore. So a lot of times we have parts lockers, but also a running system where we keep everything running and hot, so it's easier to swap out if we need to. And you say, yeah, but you got to disconnect the server. Yeah, that's true, but a running server is better than just going finding something in the closet 8 years later, that kind of stuff. I'm like the RAM version of the cookie. That's funny. Dippy, there's a lot about. So it's actually interesting. We're doing a cluster with Dell. I'm trying to think. Like I don't know how much I can say about it because when I originally got told about it about a year ago, it was still like kind of hush hush what we were doing. But when it debuts, it'll be #1 on top 500. So if you guys know what top 500 is, right? This is the top supercomputers in the world, and the one that we're helping build out will be #1. It's gonna beat all these. But if you guys have never seen top 500, it just shows you. The last one was November 2025, and the top system was El Capitan. And then it says how long he's been on there. You can go look up all that kind of stuff. Yeah, we're gonna blow that out. And it's specifically that question right there about the RAM to GPU. In HPC systems, the speed, the distance that the GPU, and when I say distance, I mean the latency time it takes between accessing the RAM and the GPU has always been a huge bottleneck for like true performance. But the newer chips that are coming out from Dell working with NVIDIA they're directly on. Basically, it's like an L2 and an L3 cache directly on the GPU, and it's super fast. It's like a leap in computing that starts to go back into the what's that curve about computing every 18 months doubles, and then we had fallen off it for a while. It's going to put us back into that curve. So you guys look that up. I forget what that curve is called, but it's an 18-month. Yeah, the GPUs and the RAM aren't going to be separated by a bus anymore, which has always been one of the problems. Yeah, it's gonna blow all this out of the water. Actually, I have a computer, so if we downloaded it, I've got a system that I maintain that when we debuted in, I think June of 2022, we were 38. Yeah, it only shows the top 10. but I can show you. And this is, I can only show you guys this because this is public domain. I would never show you guys this otherwise. So, but this is out there. You know, they published this. So back in 2022, they published it. This is dogwood and cactus. So these are part of the NSEP program. They have it all in here. But these things are fast. These debuted at 38 and 39, but then we got bumped up because somebody got taken off. So we were 37 and 38 for a while. They're the same system, so really they were just sharing 37, right? But anyways, that's something I'm working on later. Let's go back to our questions over here. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit. What's another question I could ask about this? Let's say, how do you call variables in Ansible? And this, again, some of you might go, Scott, that's really simple. Yeah, but if you've never played with Ansible, and if you were watching the stream and you're like, what the F is this guy doing? Well, the double curly brace, right? So we call via a double curly brace nomenclature, I guess structure, right? That's probably the most accurate way to put it. And then you might say, but why did you have to do the double quotes here? Well, because when it's first being read, you have to let it know that that's all one block. Otherwise, the special characters will give you problems. So that's why we do it there. We also did it down here. But you say, you didn't have to do it in the template. Yeah, that's because the template can handle it. Jinja can handle that. iHaku said, damn, how many Linux engineers get involved in projects that big? So when we build, my company, we kind of have like a little, like almost like a little strike team. And when we're setting this stuff up, it's about 4 or 5 of us. I am dedicated right now over on that NOAA project that I was just talking about. So on that team, we have 15, 16 of us that are running stuff, and we kind of specialize in different areas. I'm mostly within that team. I'm mostly monitoring and like backups. Those are my 2 kind of things that I've fallen into when I came back on the team. But in my general career, the thing that I tend to do the most is build the systems, like build the individual nodes and the images and then push them and test them. And I write a lot of the Ansible playbooks for that. So that's kind of like where my career's been, for sure. Are you using secrets with templates often? Not secrets so much. So in Werewolf, if we were talking Werewolf, which is the tool that we mostly always use, for new builds. I probably used Werewolf on 15 supercomputers in the last couple of years. It's been the major thing that I've been deploying. So secrets don't have to go in the image templates now. We put them in overlays. So like keys get pushed. Let me show you in my home lab. So let's go jump over to my Werewolf box. So here's my Werewolf server, and I can do, so here's my images in my home lab. And here's my overlays, right? And these overlays actually, so images are, back up a second, in the high performance compute world. And when we go build a compute node, and well, shoot, really anything we do in systems engineering, there's 2 problems. There's two things that have to be true about a node. These compute nodes have to be exactly the same. They have to be the same CPU to RAM ratios. They have to be the same back-end connections into the high-speed server. Like all these things have to be they have to be the same libraries and modules and all this kind of stuff for everything to work, right? They have to be exactly the same. So images are great for that. But then they have to be slightly different in IP addresses and host names and like just kind of little personalization things, right? So you've got this problem where you're trying to be exactly the same but slightly different. So images allow us to be exactly the same. But then to your point of like kind of like questions, about secrets and stuff can be pushed in overlays. So if I do like people call this www cuddle, or I just say www.ctl node list -a for, let's say, Rocky 1, the Rocky 1 server. He comes up and he's this image, right? He's Rocky Linux 9, just like all the other Rocky servers. But his runtime overlays, meaning overlays that are updated as the system, he's got an agent on him, www client. Yeah, www cuddle is, a lot of people do that with system cuddle as well. I just have always said www.ctl and systemctl. I don't know. It's the same thing with chroot and chroot. I say them both ways. I don't really, it said Sharon. That's funny. My little thing can never, like, when we start getting like into engineering stuff, this thing's never known what's going on. Same thing when I do subnetting. When I start talking ones and zeros, the system just, like, down here just blows up. It's like I have no idea what the hell this guy's saying. Let me move that up again. I need to move that up so you guys can see your chat a little better. Anyways, yeah. So anyways, runtime and system overlays. I have a whole talk on this actually that's recorded on how Werewolf works and stuff. But take these node profiles, information gets pulled by the system, and then it pulls the information that needs to. So if there was something secure inside of like host keys or something, we can push that over without it having to be on the image. So my image, I could actually share these images with anybody that wants them, and I don't have to worry about any of my secrets leaking out in my environment or my cluster. So that's kind of nice. Cube cuddle, yeah. Yeah, I've always just said like cube control or cube CTL or whatever. Yeah, but I'm also one of these guys, like, I've been doing this long enough. Like I don't get overly pedantic about, like, if an engineer says something different, I don't go, you're an idiot. Like I've got better stuff to do with my time, and most of the other like senior and principal guys do as well. So I always joke around, and you guys have probably heard me say this if you've been around a while. Like I use stuff like that sometimes to like find the juniors and the people that care about the stuff that doesn't matter, because that is the thing, right? Like, people love, they love being that guy from The Simpsons that's sitting in the comic book store going, well, actually, that guy. Anyways, yeah, we cuddle. All right, so I don't know. I was just showing you guys. Werewolf's a different day, but that is how our lab works. So if you're ever looking at like how the ProLUG lab works and how everybody can get in the nodes and then reboot them and always be back at like a clean image, that's how we do that. But I'm going far afield. So anyways, here's the solution if you needed it. It gives you basically the same thing we just built, right? Do you have your become false or true in there? Again, vars, tasks. These things are all there. Really the only one that's required here is hosts and tasks. The other ones, we do need gather facts for hours, because if you don't gather facts, you won't have these facts here, right? In fact, let me prove that to you. Let's see if I go muck around in here. Let's break stuff just to see it break. I'm gonna say don't gather any facts about my servers, because somebody on the internet one time told me that it would be 0.3 seconds faster across all my nodes, and I go, okay, fine, whatever. It is faster, but now you're not gonna populate those templates. So just bang Ansible, right? Oh, that's the other Ansible. I'll just press up a whole bunch. Where's that? Where's the last time I ran it? Yeah. Now this is going to break everywhere. But we know why it's going to break, because you're trying to call variables that were never populated. Right? So if gather facts is set to false, how does the playbook break? Does this make sense? And I would say the playbook cannot run when variables are expected but not populated, right? So, and by the way, guys, if anybody's wondering, these notes that I put over here, they will be in the, we'll drop them after a stream like this where we're doing our labs. I will go over here and I will drop them down in meeting notes. So I'll always put them right here. And if you ever want to see any of our old meeting notes and things that we're working on, any things that I talked or built or whatever, you'll see it there. Okay, so now we need to fix it, because why did we break it? $, right? Delete to the end of the line, true. Rerun our playbook. See it work, right? Because if I break something, then I want to see it working again. Yeah, actually. And then, by the way, we'll have the new one, and it'll be all the way until a 4 here, and then now there's our new template. Now, I didn't really actually do anything in this lab, because we didn't actually grab the, let's hit check, and my validation failed. And why did my validation fail? It's because I put this extra value in here. So if I wanted to cheat, I could just do touch template.text. I'm actually going to cheat. And then I'm just going to hit this, and because I know what the backend validation is. And, oh, maybe not. and then now try it. No, yeah, see, I was cheating, because I wanted to be fancy and I wanted to show you guys how we could timestamp them, but if the original lab doesn't call for you to timestamp, so if you do the basic lab here, it'll just show you if we copy these in. Oh, I'm on the wrong node. If I cat answers template.j2, and if I cat answers template.yaml, you'll see that this one this is all it was going to push over. So that's what my check actually checks for in the lab. For ls block, in my mind, I always read it as ls bulk. I didn't know the blk part comes from block. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah, ls block. Yeah, that's funny. Our team managed Ansible tells us not to gather facts by default, but do it when there's reason. Yeah, Kevin, I can see that. You can also just drop a setup module in there too, and it'll get stuff. I get it. Like, there are efficiencies, guys. When you start going over 300 nodes, that's about where you really start to want some efficiencies. But I need variables for all kinds of decisions in my playbooks, and I need all kinds of other things. So I will always just eat that time. There's a thing that I do in my environments that I can't show you guys in these labs. Well, I guess I could put it together in the labs. But one of the things I always do is I always make Ansible, when we're setting up nodes, I make the node configure itself with Ansible. I don't bring up all my nodes and then have one centralized place configure 2,600 nodes in those big cluster systems. It was taking, I remember when I was doing it, it was taking like 5 hours, if it would even finish, to do all the nodes in the cluster from one centralized node. Even if I spread it out, it was still many hours. And I had a requirement back then to get all the nodes up in under an hour. We had to go from bare metal to a running system in under an hour. That was a NOAA requirement. And so what I did was, as the nodes came up, they called their own Ansible back with a host configuration, and they built themselves. So all the nodes, and then that took 5 minutes, because every node can build itself in 5 minutes. And that's the way that I kind of I built this way. This was back in the early 2020s, and kind of invert it, if you want to think of it like that, invert the normal function of Ansible. All right, so this one, understanding Ansible, I think is very important. And let's go lab 2 for the day. And lab 2 for the day is going to be the one that actually has provided. This has been one of the most useful things that I've learned in my career how to do. I'm going to link this for you guys that want it. So if anybody wants to do labs, we're doing labs today, right? It's not the most glamorous stuff, but it's how we learn if we don't know how to do stuff. We go and we get our hands on stuff. So if you guys want to do it with me, you can. If you don't want to do it, you can still hang out, right? We don't take attendance. You just kind of do whatever you want around here. But lab 2 for the day was, we're going to do some Jinja reporting. So now we're going to switch this around. We're not going to, when the playbook's done, I'm not putting stuff on each node anymore. Now I'm going to put one report back on the main server about how everything worked across the whole cluster. So this one this has been very useful for me in my career. This is something that I do. If you come down here in like the sandbox, every morning the system checks itself. It says, here's a ProLUG lab check at this time. None of my systems are unreachable. If there were any unreachable systems in our lab, they would show up right here. So this is, I'll show you guys my method for finding this. And then if anything's rebooted in the last 24 hours, we'll also know right here, right? We can put that there. You know what? I might modify this today too if we want to. Yeah. We can modify that and play with that as well. All right, but anyways, let's you've been using Ansible and decided to work with the templating tool that comes with it. You are going to use Jinja 2, right? Jinja2, to stamp a report back to your control plane node, letting you know how the run went on all your individual servers. After you complete this testing, you expect to run against hundreds of nodes and need to know if the nodes did or didn't complete. Like, where did it or not complete? This is one of my favorites ones here. This has legitimately helped me all over the place. All right, so verify your host file. So cat root hosts, same type of server file we always had. It's an inventory file. This is our host group, and here are the targets of that host group. Okay. Create a deployment called root template.yaml to check the uptime of all the servers. Create a Jinja2 template to deploy a root report.txt report back upon the execution of the playbook. Okay. And then report back unreachable servers and servers that have been up longer than a day to root report.txt. Okay. So if we wanted to try that without any help, we could do it. Or we can just go modify and look at what's there. So if we cat root template.yaml, we see that same thing that we did earlier, right? All the start of a playbook. It's good practice if you struggle, right? You had an outage on Wednesday because someone's changed. The monitoring system noticed that the application was responding, but the incident was a P4, and that doesn't get enough attention. Yeah. P4 is typically like the lowest, right? Like P4 is one of our lower ones. How I've done it, P1s are the higher ones. So, yeah, that's interesting. So look, it's going to get information from the systems. It's just going to get uptime and register a variable called uptime. That's all we're doing right there. We do a shell command for uptime, and we get all kinds of information about it. And then we're just going to report out to the main server. We're going to take a root template.j2, and we're going to write it out to the server. And we're going to write it with that same ISO basic short like we did. Okay. We're going to modify something here to only run once and to delegate it to the local host, so it's only going to happen on this one node, which makes sense because root template.j2 isn't going to be on all your remote nodes, so it doesn't make sense for this to run everywhere. So we just run it once, only on the local host. Okay. Lower number triggers phone calls for people to notice during the day. Okay. Yeah, so P4 is too low. So I remember rebooting some Rocky VMs, and the report was not showing them being rebooted. This was a while ago. Yeah, my report is actually busted because I'm doing a Loki call. I tried to get really fancy because I was trying to keep track of all the reboots. I think I'm just going to I'm going to just go back to my original check like this, and I'll show you guys how this check works right here. This one is going to be significantly more complex Jinja, but I still think this will be really easy for people to pick up. And again, this is one of the things that I write this everywhere I go. I was actually building one of these during the training last week out in Ohio because I hadn't put it on the system yet, but I got to show the guys how this kind of works. But here it is. It says system validation at this date and this time, so same thing as before. And then it gives us the unreachable systems, and for the first time we have a control structure inside of Jinja. I hadn't before this in any of the labs. You didn't do any control structures in Jinja. You were just stamping information all the time on all the nodes. Now we're going to do something specific, and we're bringing a report back, so it's a little different. But we're going to go through all the hosts. So host is like our counting variable in the loop, if you want to think of it like that. And we're going to use a special variable called Ansible play hosts all. So let's go to special variables Ansible. I'm going to take this and say, where do you find if you need a reference? And here's the reference if anybody on here wants it. There it is on both of these things. All that is instead of a report, I can see monitoring dashboard. I do like monitoring dashboards. I only do this stuff to see clean reports every morning in my systems, and then I just go about my day. Like, I just want to see a clean output of what's going on in the system. I don't want, like, this report is designed specifically to be just super clean. And I've write this out, even currently I write this out to Teams, Slack, Discord, for all kinds of different one of my other things, so we were talking earlier about what I do at Redline. I'm full-time on NOAA, but I also sometimes get dropped in on special projects where maybe a team's, for lack of a better term, lost controlling, or what some people call it, you've lost the thread, and they just don't have like a good control or command of their environment anymore, their HPC, and they need somebody to kind of come in and organize like the admins and organize the people. So that's something I kind of do too. They basically just drop me in with like my little backpack, and I just go fix things in systems and show people where problems are. And this is one of the things that I often deploy because I just want to see the state of the system every morning. And what'll happen, I think I told you guys I was working at a college last year, about a year and a half ago. I was working at this college, And we had a 1250 node system, 1250, 1260, somewhere in there. But they had never had in the system more than 1100 nodes up. So they had, and then from that 1100, when you had errors, sometimes you'd be lower. But that's like, I mean, that's almost, not quite 15%. That's like 12% of the system down all the time. It had just never been brought up, even from when they first got it from their vendors, because they did a hardware deploy every 6 months in the system. It's a big college in the Northwest, in fact. But they had never ever been anywhere near 100%. Now, HPC clusters are always going to have systems out. You have, when you deal just with the simple math of 1200 node system, mean time between failure says you're going to have a node down a day, probably on average, right? Like if you take it out and say over the course of our mean time between failure on power supply units is every 5 years, you know, within 5 years you will fail on average, right? That's but across 1200 nodes, you expect nodes to go down pretty regularly. So you expect 2 to 3% of the cluster to be down. But 12% always down, and then you have that operation outside of it. Well, we did something like this, and we added this in so we could see the broken nodes every morning, and we started fixing them. And after the year I was with that team, I was embedded for a year with them. When we got all done, we had only like about 3 or 4 nodes out at any given time in that cluster. So we, without spending any money, except sunk costs of our salaries, which they were already paying us, we had a increase in that cluster speed by nearly 12%, just by virtue of we finally turned nodes on and put them into the damn cluster. And you say, wait, the nodes were just off? No, they were off and unconfigured because so it's a long story as we step back, but as you deploy, you deploy a piece of software, right? You deploy an operating system with a kernel, then whatever Mellanox cards you have for like your InfiniBand drivers, you have to build for that kernel and that hardware, right? You have to build that for each one. And when you have a bunch of different drops that have been coming in, again, there was like this drop of hardware that had never worked for them. They just bought it for, hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe even up in the millions, and they never got it into their cluster. So we went through and we started prioritizing that stuff, and then I'm the guy that builds a lot of that. And then there's like matrices that I'll build where it's like, okay, here's our kernel version, here's our OFED driver, here's our GPFS for the general parallel file system for IBM's tooling, and then the Slurm version, and I would drop that on all those nodes and bring them in, and then we would see the nodes clean up, and after time we got to where we had only a few nodes down. But again, until you visualize it, it's like you have something in the corner and you never go look in the corner, so that corner never gets cleaned. It's the same kind of idea. Let's just shine the light over there and clean the damn thing up, and then not have to worry about it. Here, taxpayer. No, this was a. I guess that is a public school. I was going to say, I thought this school was a private school, so it wouldn't have been tax dollars. No, in government space, I've never had that much down in the government project. Just so you know. But on the, this was a college, so things had fallen by the wayside. When I dropped in on that team, we only had 2 people on the team, and we had 4 people leave the year before. Those 4 people took 50 years worth of knowledge out of that system. So those 2 people had about like 7 years of experience on that system between the 2 of them. And then I dropped in, I helped them rebuild their team, got it up to like 8 people, did all my interviews and stuff, got people in, and then moved on. But anyways, we do this. This is the technical stuff. Technical stuff's more fun to me anyways. Let's look at these variables real quick. I gave you guys a link to them. Where do you find special variables in Ansible? Why do you want to know these? They're always there. They're always there to use. Ansible has like a little sack that it walks around with as you go through a playbook, and it always knows about these variables. They will always be there for you. So the 2 that I like to use here, the 2 that we are using, is Ansible Playhosts and Ansible Playhost All. And Ansible Playhost is when you start a play, it's every host that is targeted by the play. It's everybody that gets to the starting line at the start. And Ansible Playhosts are all the ones who make it to the end of the race. And there's a delta. If you have 100 nodes and 10 of them break down or have something fail on them, then at the end of the race you have 90. So when you compare those two like a little Venn diagram, you'll get 10 nodes that didn't make it. 10 nodes that are outside of the completed nodes. So we just use this to calculate that. Super easy. There's a shorter way to do this, but I lost it. It's been lost to time, and I haven't gone and rewritten it. If any of you guys want to look up the Python filter to just compare between 2 sets, you could shorten this. But right here, I just say if host, so you're counting over all the hosts that started at the starting line, If you don't see that host at the ending line, at the finish, drop his name right here. If he is there, this will just skip over. So this will just populate with all the nodes that can't be reached. Okay? What have been happening now is 1,700 agents. We only have 1 or 2. They're down in the process of being retired now. A huge improvement over. That is actually pretty good. And that's not even hosts. That's just the agents. Those vars are great because there's no work to populate them. Just use. Yep. Yep. I agree. Absolutely. So this is a super simple one. This is all over in our Discord. We have an Ansible. Just stuff that we've written over the years. There is so much stuff up here if you go look through like blocks of code that me and different guys. We have people in the Discord that are way better than me at Ansible. But just like here's Colkis doing some testing in his lab, right? Different stuff that I was using for like my deploy test to Proxmox in my home lab. This is actually something that's going to be coming up in my new deploy, where when you drop into the Bastion, you're going to wait in the Bastion while it provisions you a node, and then when you leave that node and the node sees it has nobody on it, it's just going to shut down. So we're going to make a more efficient way of our lab resources being used. When I do that, I'm going to be able to start decommission those older XCP-NG boxes that I was talking about and get them out of the home lab. Have that other room that's my workout room be a little cooler because there's not so much systems in there just making noise. But anyways, where I'm going with that is there's a lot of Ansible in our Discord. There's a whole plethora of information, and there's really good engineers out there that can answer questions and help you out if you've got honest questions or whatever. Now this one's going to do something a little different. This is going to go, and this one's a little bit longer because it's hosts that have been up longer than a day. So if you're ever on a Linux box, right, and you do an uptime, if you've been up, oh man, this guy needs to get patched. If you've been up longer than a day, you will see the word day in your uptime. If you haven't been up longer than a day, you do not see the word day. He's only been up 15 hours. We rebooted him yesterday. He does not have the word day in there. So I can use that logically to see if a server has restarted in the last day. So when I come in the morning and I have 1,600 or 1,200 nodes in a cluster, and I just want to know which nodes have rebooted in the last day for whatever reason, we can go dig into why, but if there was no maintenance, none of my nodes should have rebooted. I can do something like this. So I go through that same thing for host, and that's my counting variable, in all the hosts that we started with. And we use host vars with hosts, so let's say the first host in this node, and this was control plane. If host vars control plane dot uptime, so that's a variable that is found from our playbook right here. This is a registered variable for uptime. If that is defined, then we continue down. If it's not, we just leave this loop. Well, we leave this section of the loop. If day is in, right, so we're doing Python, this is very Python-esque. If day is found in that value, uptime.std out, so in the standard out, part of that variable that's been registered, then we dropped it and we say has not rebooted. So you might say, Scott, wait, a second ago you just said, I want to know if day, you just said the opposite of that. And I say, yeah, that's true. In this case, what I was testing for was, let's say I was patching 1,000 nodes, and I need to know which ones still have day because they haven't rebooted yet. So this is like an inverse of logic. But if I wanted to check if day not in that, then I would say node has rebooted in the last 24 hours. So this is hosts that have been up longer than a day because, if I was patching or something, I want to know they rebooted. It's the opposite logic, but it's, what do you want to check for? In my home lab, where does that happen? I think it happens over here. No, this one's commented out, so it's over on this guy. Yeah, so here's our, nope, that's the Bastion one. So who does it? Oh, maybe Werewolf does it. I don't know where it happens. Nope. Nope. All right, I'm dumb. I don't know where my head lab does things anymore. Oh, here it is. Here it is. You guys will find out. I hardly ever know what's going on. So here's my let's CD into here. Then we need roles, and then daily ProLUG lab check tasks. Tasks? No, templates. Here's how we write it from here. In this case, we're doing a different one, but we're looking for events in this Loki output. So it's a little bit different here. But look, we're looking for events for the report. I can modify this. We still have an uptime, so I could still do the same uptime thing and just see if nodes have rebooted this other way. And this would look, so let's maybe in case I need the original again. And then let's go down here and let's drop in this logic from our lab, right? We're just gonna go make this live. I was joking around about we're doing it live. Capture that, drop it here. Ansible play host tall uptime if day in. If day is not in, then that guy has rebooted today. Yep. And just to test it for this, we'll test it for tomorrow morning. We could manually run it, I guess, too. Let's do this real quick. Let's SH2 Rocky 4 again. Nope. Yep, he's there still. Let's just grab that run. Let's just run it right now. By the way, I can also say report true or false, and I either will or won't send it. Let's go watch in our Discord real quick. Oh, I hate that. I can't believe I still have Calcay on there. Let's go to our little sandbox. And let's watch for this let's watch for this to run right now. It'll come out here. Did I not save my... What am I doing here? We definitely have uptime there. This is a longer, so I'm doing queries against my API and for Loki. That's the other way I was doing it. For host in that, if day. That should definitely be. What am I hitting? Rocky Bastion, Hammer Bastion. Oh, hold on. An older server, so okay, yeah, so those are all there. They should all be hit. That's this is the one I just ran. Strange. Definitely strange. Why is it not seeing? Because the variables are there. Part of the process. Yeah. By the way, I can. Yeah, I could show you something, Dippy, that might help. One thing I can do to test this, right, is I could add in here. Let's CD back to where we were. One of the things I can do is I can have all my debugs in here, but I don't want to see the debugs if I don't need them. So I go like this. So debug the uptime, and then I say debug, and then the var that I'm going to use is uptime. But I'm only going to say verbosity of 2. So only when I'm being very verbose. Where's my playbook? And I'm going to change my reporting to false, so it's not going to come out again until I'm ready. Now, I can at least see what those values have in them, so it's going to dump right here. It's going to go hit all those nodes. Don't worry about that. It's going to go hit all of them. We're going to get, because we did a verbosity of 2, we're going to see that the standard output says... Oh, I took Rocky 4 out of there. That's what it is. I had pulled Rocky 4 out because we weren't using it. Hold on. So see, Rocky 4 is not in there. Let's solve this without modifying those any. This is the easiest way to do it. Reboot. So this is the easiest way. We won't modify this in any way. But now let's run this. Go back to true. That node's going to be down, so that node's not going to respond here in a second. So now when I do it, Rocky 2 is going to be busted. Rocky 4 I pulled out of monitoring a while back. That's my fault. So this, we didn't want to modify the number of systems, so test again. Now we'll see the reboot report correct. I often tell people, if you're in our home lab, or if you're watching this stuff, yeah, see how Rocky 2 is now unreachable? I'm going to give this it takes about 3 minutes to boot and come back up, back to a clean image. We're going to do it again. Rocky 2 will no longer be unreachable. He'll be up, but he'll be rebooted in the last 24 hours. So now we're testing all the functionality. He was unreachable here because he didn't respond to SSH. He didn't get to the end of the play. But now he's going to get to the end of the play, but he's going to have been rebooted. So we're testing our logic. So we come back over here, actually. And we're going to go to home. And we're going to say sleep, let's say 180, and then we'll run. So we can just sit here and hang out while that node comes back up, which we were already at about a minute or two, but he takes about 180 seconds on my older hardware to come up, so about 3 minutes. On the newer Proxmox system, it takes about 10 seconds. So I can instantiate nodes a lot faster for you guys over there, which is kind of nice. But if you saw that thing that I did, Dippy, it was just, it was debug, and then the variable that I wanted to debug, that's a very common thing that we use in Ansible. But then the dash, or the verbosity of 2 meant don't show that to other people. Like if I have other teams running my playbooks and stuff and I don't want them to see it, I can do it that way. So this is going to take a few seconds, and I'll say last test, uptime validation check, right? And then now we'll see this node has rebooted in the last 24 hours. So we can just at least see if people have been rebooting nodes or whatever, which really is just, that means people are using this stuff. Yeah. Dippy, that, and you can change that verbosity, but it's really just up to you how you want to see stuff. And because I used to always just comment them out. You'll even see it in some of the labs. I just commented stuff out for debugs. Now I just leave them all in. If I'm ever debugging, I just do that, and then I can watch it run, and I can leave it in case I ever need to troubleshoot it. Or if like a team comes to me and says, hey, we're having this problem. You said give us these variables in our environment file, but it's not working when I put it up into, Ansible automation platform or tower or whatever, and I say, okay, well let's go, and then we'll run it and we'll actually see what's happening. So it's kind of nice. This last one should run here in a second. Just running in the lab. We've got we're almost to 4,800 people. We're probably going to pass 5,000 here. I don't know, probably by June. August we'll do a big thing in August for we always do our anniversaries, and we have a bunch of guest speakers come in. So we'll probably have a bunch of those coming up. It'll be a weekend in August, but that'll be kind of cool. Let's see if this last check works. We expect no unreachable systems because he'll be up, and then we expect a reboot report to show that Rocky 2 has taken the trip down into Dreamland at least one time. So let's see. Should be coming up. Kind of useful. Let's go see. Yeah, it's still sleeping. It's a long 3 minutes, guys. I'm normally over here like this. I don't normally do sleeps like that. Only if I'm like talking with other engineers and we're on a call. I tell people, like, I always learn a lot when me and other engineers get on calls and somebody's driving. I don't think there's ever a point where you're not going to like pick up some trick. And I remember we were sitting on a call one time and we were like, oh, it's going to take about 5 minutes. And the guy did the sleep 300, right? And then we went on talking and we were like, that's all brilliant. Like, we all knew how to do it. We had just never thought to do it before. And then that's been just some staple that I've used for a long time since then. So let's wait. Let's see if this pops up correctly. Again, longest 3 minutes of my life. It should be right about now because it's, yeah, there we go. So Rocky 2 has rebooted. And we could take the today off of there, but yeah, because the today is not technically correct, but Rocky 2 has rebooted in the last 24 hours is correct. So then we can keep track of which nodes have rebooted in the cluster. So that's kind of useful. Okay. Also, I'm not getting alerts when people follow. So Curden, thanks for the follow. Hopefully this stuff's useful to you. We're just doing labs for the most part, but we're also just kind of messing around as we go. This is a breakdown of the YAML playbook if you didn't want to copy it, and we should just be able to verify that those things have been pushed. So let's see, did I push it here? Yeah, let's run it. It's going to go hit the nodes. It's going to pull a report back, and then I can just cat it out and see that none of the systems have rebooted. But if I wanted to, watch, I would say vi etc host root hosts. And then I might say, well, what about node 02? Node 02 will be at the starting line, but he will immediately fail because he doesn't exist. So then he should come out in the report that there was a failed node. So if I do my cat report, I'm just checking all of them. Yeah, in the second run that we did, there was an unreachable node, node 02. The reason I ran this is actually a huge one for me. When I start patching, I've got 1,000 nodes to patch tonight in some patch window, and I got most of my Linux team on. I got like 6 juniors and then me, and I'm running stuff. I always do a check at the beginning and see which nodes are not there of the 1,000. Because in 1,000 nodes that comes from like a CMDB, I guarantee you have at least 20 nodes down. That would only be 2%. That's a pretty small number out of 1,000, but you're going to have at least 20 down. You want to know what's down at the beginning, because if you get to, and trust me, I know this from experience, if you get to like 4 a.m. and you've patched all the nodes and all the teams have validated stuff, but your team is still sitting on these 20 nodes, and you're like, guys, why are these nodes down still? Well, were they up at the beginning of the play? Well, I don't remember. I don't remember either. But the playbooks have scrolled, right? The original runs have scrolled. You're just gonna be sitting there trying to bring nodes up. People are going to be looking for like decommission tickets, and you're like, all right, these 6 were actually in stage 2 decommission, so they were about to be deleted on Monday anyways, so we don't need those 6. Okay, we still got 14 left. And why do you want to be doing that like after a full night of like patching and stuff? That's just it's a nightmare, guys. It's absolute nightmare. Okay, I've been talking a lot, but let's see what values, what things could we maybe look out of this. What are the new variables that we have put into the template module? 2 new arguments. They're arguments they have put into the template module. And the answer for that is we have done run once, yes. And by the way, like I said earlier, this can also be other things, and your team may have a hard rule that should be true, okay? And then delegate to, we only want it to run on the local host, so we can do that. I also do stuff like that when I want to run API calls against just one thing. That's another place that you might do this, okay? So that's something that was new in this lab. If we wanted to do that same question from earlier, right? If we wanted to debug, but only at a certain verbosity, var is going to be uptime, and then we want the like that, verbosity 2. What is the variable? What is the argument that we can add in debug to only show output for a variable when verbosity is set to 2? And it would be this, right? So these are, again, these are notes that'll go in the Discord for anybody that wants to look at this stuff later. And this was a thing that we added, so this wasn't actually part of the playbook, right? This isn't there in the default lab, so it's only if you were to have put it. And then if we run it, we run our playbook, and we'll see it skip. We'll actually watch it skip on those nodes, so it'll skip the debugging of uptime. But if we add a bunch of these, 2, you can add more, and you'll see more connection information, more specific things that are happening. There you go. There's our actual debugs here, right there. This is important to note too, like uptime dot whatever are all of the different values you can have. So the decision we're making in the Jinja template is uptime dot standard out, and we're doing a simple little filter search to see if the word day shows up in there. That's all we're doing. So, having proper tests beforehand streamlines the process too. Yeah, sure. I do a lot of this stuff. Like I tell you guys all the time, if you watched me work throughout the day, you'd be like, this guy's a madman. I don't know how he gets anything done. He's just jumping around. But at the end of the day, we kind of pull it all together, coalesce it down into a working thing. And then a lot of this stuff is just, I've run these and practiced these a lot over time. And I know the output that I want to see. And like if I'm showing it to like a junior engineer, we have this. We have a stand-up meeting for one of our NOAA projects, and in that stand-up meeting, somebody was going in every morning on Slack. They were putting put your daily items. So stand-up meetings are always, what did you do yesterday, or what did you complete? What are you working on today? What are your blockers? Right, those are the 3 things that we always work on. And they were going and manually doing that. So I was like, well, we can just push that from one of our Linux boxes. So I built that out, and then I was gone all last week. I was in Ohio training people, and that thing's been pushing that message every day, and then people are just we just turned it into a thread, and then we just put everything underneath it. So it's kind of nice. It works well. All right. Yeah, so there's our playbook. There's our running through, and at the end of the day, when we're looking at this Ansible stuff, those 2, the first one, like stamping servers, is okay. That's helped me some in my career, but definitely this like reporting back has greatly been useful to me. There's another one down here where I talk about Ansible to generate a CSV report, and some of you are going to go, well, CSV, I get that's comma separated variables or whatever it is, comma separated, right, values. Why would I want to do that? Well, because, as we say in this one, I'll link this one. This can be lab 3 for the day. So, third, what would I do for the earlier ones? Lab 3 of the day. I'll link this if anybody wants to do it with me. There's the lab. There's the lab. The thing I want to show you guys about this is the feeding and caring of managers, right? Like, we're engineers, we kind of know what's going on, we're individual contributors, but management is always going to have requests. Like we talk about in the admin course where work comes from, And the first place that work comes from is typically like your users, and you've got ticketing system of some type. They can throw things into a queue, and then you guys work on them and whatever. That's typically like admin work. But when you get over into engineering, a lot of times you're not doing as much admin stuff. You still pretty much have to keep the system working. You're always going to do that if they're paying you. But you're also going to get work from like meetings, and other teams are going to have requests, and you're going to have like artifacts and stuff that you build and all that. But management's always going to be coming to you and being like, tapping you on the shoulder. Hey, what's this? What's this? And in this case, management had asked you to provide system information about all the systems in your HPC cluster and to give it to them in a format that they can digest via Excel. Management wants to see things in spreadsheets. Spreadsheets run the world. I don't care. I mean, we can have all kinds of awesome, super fast, scalable databases. Management and project managers are still going to exist by sending each other Excel docs. And you might not believe that, but when you get out in the industry, you will believe that. I have a brother who works in data analytics for a big insurance. So I have two brothers that are still in the insurance companies, but one of them does data analytics with like Power BI, and he'll make all these cool dashboards and all this stuff. He's been doing that for a few years. He comes and talks to the Linux group every now and then. And he says it's invariable. He'll be in like a C-level meeting, right? So all of the C-levels of his big insurance company that's very well known. And I mean, it's one of the big like 6 in the U.S. And he'll be in these meetings with like the C-suites, and they'll be like, hey, that's really cool. Can we get a button right there that just exports this as an Excel for us? And he's like, like he'll have pivot tables and Power BIs and all these like data queries against all this data, and here's the numbers for like what to expect with this type of, and then they'll just be like, that's cool, very colorful, can you push button and give me Excel? That's he said it's basically, he just always puts it there now because he expects it every time. Anyways, if you don't know that about management, you will. And if you're in management, you're probably looking at an Excel spreadsheet going, is he talking about me? If you're a manager, you probably haven't been sitting here with me this long. You probably would be doing something else. You've decided to build an Ansible playbook that can report out in CSV format. This comes from a real world scenario that I actually had. We were in that cluster that I mentioned earlier where every 6 months we would get a new drop of hardware, but every year the vendor was changing hardware. So we had this cluster that was a Frankenstein's monster of parts that, again, some nodes weren't even in. They legitimately did not get in until I went and built out a matrices and built them into the system. And mainly because, again, we were sweeping to the edges of the room and we had light in the room, so we knew what was busted. But anyways, they didn't know these values. You're going to say they didn't know this about the they did not know what I'm about to show you about the cluster. They wanted to know these things. Actually, hold on. It's in the playbook. I thought I put it at the top. Okay, well, I don't have it. We'll go look at it real quick. So here's the root host file in this one. Now we've got variables appended to the end of server. So if you're not familiar with that, in your .ini file, you can have variables that are applied to each of these. That's not really that important. We're going to make a directory structure. So playbook roles and playbook supports, and then we're going to reports rather, and we're going to move down into roles, and we're going to I only do commands like this when I'm showing people stuff. Once people have been doing Linux a while, you don't really use tree much anymore, but there's nothing in here. This is empty. This is an empty directory. And then I do an Ansible Galaxy init for data gather, and we're going to build this data gather role, right? And then we rerun the command, and we see that's what Ansible Galaxy init did for me. It built this whole structure out. Strictly speaking, you don't need almost any of this to work. The only thing you really need in a role is your tasks and your main.yaml in there. But all of this other stuff is useful stuff that is there if you do need it. So I just like to generate it all, right? And if you ever go see, if you're ever in a company I've worked with and you find my little Scott sandbox directory or my root sandbox directory, you'll find that all of my roles have just been built with Ansible Galaxy. I don't just generate roles, like I don't just make files and then do that. I just generate them like this. It's super easy and it gives you the structure you need, but really all you need is this right here. All right, so anyways, I showed you that. We can copy in some values, but before we do, let's go look at it. So I'm just gonna cat answers data gather.yaml. Whoops. And whoops, data gather. YAML differently. This is going to be the playbook that runs, and then the main in there should be, let's go look at, here's the main .yaml. And these were the 4 things, there were 5 things they needed to know. This is actually funny. They wanted to know this, and this, they asked me for this. What is the server name? What does the server make? Like, who made the server? Because, again, Frankenstein's monster. They wanted to know the server model, and then they wanted to know the processor type and the number of sockets that it had. That's it. Those are the 5 things they wanted to know about their whole cluster. And I decided to go gather that information in Ansible. Now, the first 3 things come from facts, meaning if I do gather facts, it'll give me the info I need. The last 2 came from these commands that I mucked together from LSCPU, and we gathered the information by cutting it down and then awking to print just the one, and then validating that only the one came out. And then here's a processor type, and here's the socket. We registered them as variables, so now we had all 5 of the variables that we needed to put into the CSV, right, comma separated value. Then down here, if we wanted to debug everything at a verbosity of 2, we could. And we did something here that I haven't done in other playbooks today. We looped over, and we used to use with underscore items. That's the old nomenclature of Ansible. The newer one is loop, so we did loop. And we looped over all of those if we wanted to debug them, but only at a verbosity of 2. We can debug everything to the screen, just to look. Am I getting the variables? Are the things right? And then when we're ready, we deploy it with a template, and the template does that same, CSV and all that kind of stuff. Oh, you can also JQ through. I didn't even think about that. That would have been good too. Yeah. This was just my little, again, some of my stuff is really dirty, but if it's just a quick and dirty question from management, I'll just give them a correct but quick and dirty answer. So this was us just digging in. I probably should have just used something like JQ or something. Yeah. And JQ is not my cluster. I would have put it there. Yeah. And if I needed to, I would install it if I had to. But yeah, these are my 5 things I needed to give management. Now, I'm going to show you something that's really ugly, but Jinja templates are always ugly. So at the end of the day, I mean, they're just always ugly looking. This is going to be, what is this? Datagather.j2. Now, it has to be ugly by necessity because we're going to CSV format, and you're doing a template into that format. So this is one line here. I know, it's ugly. Let me pull this over a little bit so you guys can see. It's a little bit ugly, but it's because we had to put it all. So here's our comma separated value: date, node name, server model, processor type and model, and then socket number. Those were the I guess this would be 6 fields. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 across the screen. We're gonna have 6 fields. And then I said for Ansible play hosts all, so from all of them, if host_vars.hostSocket, so that's one of the variables from earlier, is defined, then we just dump everything out. Ansible datetime.date and .time are in the date field, so here's the first comma that maps to there. Node name is going to come directly from host_vars host, Ansible host name that was already known by the system, right? Server make is going to come from right here, Ansible system vendor, right? And by the way, you say, Scott, how did you find all these? Well, I did my setup, and then I looked through them for whatever values I wanted, right? And I wrote them down and put them in Notepad. Host_vars host Ansible product name told me we would be in the, third field now? Yeah, that would be server model. And then processor type is our proc_type.standardout, so that was one of the ones that we gathered. And then our socket is another one that we gathered right there. So there's our 6 fields across, maps to the 6 fields in the header, and we should then be able to, if we wanted to, copy these all over. So we're going to copy each one of these over and look at them. Boom. There's the playbook. Inherits the role data gather. Then we're going to copy in the main and look at main. It's that same thing we were just looking at. And then we're going to go, why do we have different shell commands? Well, because we have to gather each different piece of information and register it. Then we're copying our Jinja 2 template and go cat that out. That's what it looks like, kind of messy. And then we come down here and let's run the playbook to see it gather the data. Is this going to gather the data? Are they all available? Yeah, it's not clean looking, but it's clean when it comes out. So, whoops. Let's go into reports. That is very ugly for us as humans, but that's very nice. If I were to grab that and throw that in a notepad on my machine, right? Just grab this right here. Go right here. Just drop it in a notepad. And then I'll just do like a file, save as, and I just go to, you know, right in here on downloads and call this, you know, report dot CSV, right? Boom. And then now I go to my server here, I go to my system, and I go right here. I just double click on report.csv. My system already thinks it's Outlook. And it should, if we don't have any problems, should all be on the same line. But it looks like we have some kind of problem in there, so let's go see if something's busted. Ah, there is a problem. Oh, probably because of how. Oh, it's because of how I copied it. That's my fault. That's how I copied it. So hold on. Socket. Non-Intel Sandy Bear. Why did that? Yeah, these are on the wrong line. That's my fault. Yeah, that was my fault for having a new line character in there. So let's file. Let's get out of here. Don't save. Let's go file. Save. That was my copy, guys, that did that. I'm gonna double click it again. It's gonna open up again. There it is. That looks right. That was my copying problem. I would have that thing directly pushing a thing over to my management. So I would never have touched that manually normally. But here's my info. Right? And then management could then go look real quick and say, okay, Scott pulled all this information. It can, right? You can start to do, guys, I claim no great expertise in Excel. My brother Tommy would probably laugh his ass off at me, but I can filter here, and then I could come in and I could say, okay, I just want all of these ones. These happen to be the same exact hardware, but in this cluster, they were all different. It should tell me how many of each there were. So when you would filter down here, let's say I was only looking for one type, it would say, let's go here, unselect all. Well, we need other versions. Let's do it this way. Let's call this AMD, just for fun. And then we're mucking around. Now I unselect all and I do only AMD and I hit enter, and at the bottom you see how it says 1 of 2 records found. That one right there would be, then the management could go and say, well, there's 72 AMD out of the 1,000, so those were the ones from that one drop. And then these other ones, you know, and we could start to figure that out. Again, I don't claim any great. That's like all I know how to do in here. My brother Tommy can transform this stuff and do all kinds of other stuff. And actually, he's come the last 2 like big group meetings that we have for ProLUG, and Tommy has shown you guys, like, he did like some fantasy football stuff one time. Last year he did, what did he do last year? I don't know. His talks though, if you're like, what was Tom doing? Tom's stuff is here in presentations, and he put all the data. Yeah, so he was doing like user stories and key performance indicator metrics for teams and stuff. So I'll get Tom to come talk again. Then he had like some project data, and then he did like a PowerPoint for data analytics stuff. So yeah, we can go look at what he did. Did we ever record him? I don't think we recorded his stuff at all. But anyways, we have all the old presentations up in our Discord if people want. Because I don't know, you know, some people are really interested in doing data analytics stuff. Like, that is interesting to me. I'm an amateur data scientist, but I'm not a professional one. I do data analytics stuff for like fun and like for my dissertation and stuff, but I don't do it professionally, you know. All right, let's get this out of the way. What were all these things? Like, what were all the things that were useful to us here? We might say, did the report come out in .csv format? And the answer is yes. Let's say, if we're looking at the Jinja, Does the debug work correctly at verbosity 2? Let's go look at that. So let's run our playbook again, right? We can just regenerate over the top of it, and we can add -VV, and let's see if the verbosity causes this thing to dump all this data to the screen. Yeah, there we go. So now for control plane, here's my socket.standardout is 1. Ansible product name is there was none. We don't even have any on these boxes. My processor type is right here on standard out. It's kind of a long one, but that may be useful for the different types of architecture of chips that we have, and that's actually very important when you do jobs across parallelized clusters and you have jobs that are running against like 100 nodes. You do want to make sure those are the same type of nodes, because you will have processing differences, and it will affect research and all kinds of other things. So yeah, and then we would take this information and maybe cluster our Slurm or our PBS Pro or Platform LSF, whatever tooling you're using. We used in that cluster Slurm. Slurm is a pretty good job scheduler tool that we use. Anyways, so we can go do all that. All right, yeah, yes. And then maybe we say over here, how does the loop structure work in Ansible, right? Because it used to be the older way is with items, and that's actually why that variable, because you might go, what? That's super weird that in Ansible, let's go look at that real quick, because you might think like I do, that's super weird. Why is the counting variable item? Well, that's a throwback to when Ansible used to be with _items, right? But let me show you guys here. Let's go to Ansible, and then let's say loop control. There's now a tremendous amount of power inside of the loop. Did you just sneeze? Bless you. Thought I heard the wife sneeze. Don't worry, guys. I'm not talking to myself. That was the wife in the other room. So look, migrating from with X to loop. If you're used to with items or with list, then here's how it moves to loop. So with list, you used to do a list, or with items. That's the way I'm used to doing it. I always did with items right here. And it can loop over things. You can even flatten down, and that's a pipe. That is a filter inside of Python, right? With indexed items, if you have indexed items, you can flatten them down as well. Then it says with flatten. So they just keep going through and keep showing you how you can loop over different items if you needed to get specific information out of data, or if you were going to be getting data as a dictionary or a list. You can do with dict items, which is your dictionary items, or your dict sort. That's funny. Because this thing won't say this thing won't say bad words, but it did just say that, which I think is super funny. Which means I can get around some of the things that it doesn't think I should be able to say. With sub-elements, with nested Cartesian, probably more things than I even know how to do. With random choice, you can actually generate random numbers, which I've had to do before. You say, Scott, did you ever use with random? Yep, I did actually. I'll show you where. Is there a qualis in here? Where is... Nothing for qualis in there, huh? I definitely did this on stream many years ago, though. Yeah, I have no idea where I put it. I definitely did, And oh shoot, yeah, I have no idea where I put it. I definitely did it on stream a while back. You know what? I got it over here. Hold on. Just go here. I'll show you guys. So this is my old Ansible report. This is my report from Qualys of whether or not Qualys was running on systems. But let me see if I have the original playbook I wrote that deployed. Yeah, this is one. I actually wrote this one on stream out here, but then I had to do this. So do you guys remember when, does anybody here remember Log4j? When Log4j hit, this was how I wrote it. But down here, so what happened was we didn't want to put it on, we had to scan to see for Log4j, and Qualys was our scanning tool. So I had to put this script out there. But yeah, so push the script over. But what happened then was we didn't want to push it to 1,200. Actually, in that company, it was about 1,500 nodes, but it wasn't a cluster. 1,500 nodes. But we wanted it to randomize when it was being written in the cron tab. So down here, when I got to actually running it, setting up a random cron tab entry from 0900 to 2100, and actually my logic is bad here. If you start at 9 with a random to 21, it will go, I think it starts at 10 to 2100. So I actually had bad logic, but it didn't matter to the output of the play, but my runtime logic was bad. But this is how I set up a random cron tab entry in from 0900 to 2100. And then it was right here. So line 1 is the minute, but then for the hour, I randomized a variable between 9. Well, but I think it was no, actually, maybe it stopped at 20. Yeah, maybe it didn't get to 2100. Maybe that's what it was. Whatever it was, it doesn't really matter. My logic was bad, and I should have went back and fixed it one day, but it doesn't really matter. But then we could generate these numbers and see them. So those were the hours it would start. So all the nodes were randomized, and then it was every month. You know, so you can go look up cron tab if you want. And then the timeout was 7,200 seconds. So what was that, 2 hours? I think that's 2 hours. And then root spring findings, whatever it was, and then I don't know why I had true on there. Oh, I think it was because you needed to do that when you called the script. They needed the directory path as the first argument, so everything, and then true was like if they reported out or something. I don't remember. But this put it in there. This really just set it to go in there, and then this would go find if the log4j was anywhere in the system. If the vulnerable Java was there, and then when the Qualys scanner ran throughout the whole company, which was always running, it would gather those findings out. So this was our method to find things within the company. And I had to do a few other things. The Qualys scanner actually assumed that you had zip and unzip on boxes, which we couldn't assume. I actually fed that back up to Qualys when we were working with them early on in this and updated their GitHub. Because this package is still on GitHub. You can still go download this and run this in your system. See if you have log4j vulnerabilities. You shouldn't, but you might. And then this was all the rest of it. So anyways, I just showed that to show you guys how I set the cron job. And then this was the output. If Qualys wasn't running, I wanted to know it. Because if the Qualys scanner wasn't able to get in, all this stuff was a moot point because it would just be sitting there on the box inert. Right? All right. Anyways. Yeah, I knew I had written it out here on the, like, let's think of it as the unclass side. I wrote it out here before I put it up into the company so that we could look at it. Yeah, so that's, I don't know, that's all important. All right, well, we're hitting 2 hours. I'm trying to get back into streaming more, so I don't want to burn out too much. But these labs, I'll take all this, Control-A, Control-C. I'll drop this in notes. So I'll say meeting notes. Here's we talked about today. right? Boom. There's the notes if anybody wants them. And yeah, we'll probably call this good. Let's go raid it. Let's go find somebody to raid. YouTube side, I appreciate you guys sticking around with me. You guys know you can always hop down in the Discord, and there's all kinds of stuff going on in there that's fun. But I'll go ahead and stop on the YouTube side. I do appreciate you guys all coming by. I will see you guys. I'll definitely be on more this week. I may even be on later tonight, but if I am, I'll be working on my dissertation. So some people find that really boring when I'm just reading research, but